today, we are going to talk about how future technology is going to help all of you navigate the crazy world of rules and regulations surrounding responsible gambling, anti-money laundering, AI, all of this good stuff. So, to help us get through these complicated topics, we'll try to make them as exciting as possible. We have a brilliant panel. So I'm going to start off by having each of these ladies introduce themselves to you. So we will start with you, Andrea.
Hi, so my name is Andrea. I'm the head of internal audit department at GreenTube. For whoever's not aware of GreenTube, we are the daughter company of, well, one of the daughter companies of Novamate. Maybe that name is a bit more known. We do B2C, so we have our own brands in 4 jurisdictions, and we also do handle B2B business where we offer games, software, and products. We also do social games as well.
Brilliant. Paula.
Thanks, Becky. So before I introduce myself, I just want to point out how awesome it is that we have an all-female panel.
You stole my money, Paula.
Great one.
So my name is Paula Murphy. I'm Business Development Manager for Migrate AI. Sorry to those of you who caught the session earlier because you've heard me say all this already, but we basically specialise in player tracking for the identification of problematic play, bringing together a really unique combination of neuroscience, expert psychological assessment, and AI machine learning technology.
Very good. Justyna?
Hi, I'm Justyna Gruszak-Głębicka. I'm from Poland. I'm a lawyer. I have my own law firm based in Warsaw and also in Białystok, which is my hometown. So my main specialization is gambling law, but not the only one, and compliance too. And this is my first panel in English language, so I'm asking you for being understanding. And if you have any questions or I am unclear, just please ask and I will try different words. Thank you.
Amazing. We love you, Justyna. You are awesome. Yes. And again, thank you so much to the organizers for organizing all females up here. That's really impressive. The UK had their first Women in Tech Week last week, which I was a part of. So I'm really happy to be part of this right now. And I'm sure all of you are aware of this, but this panel is super important because we're going to help you learn how to not get fined. We don't want fines. We don't want to be spending money for unnecessary reasons. And also it's going to help us improve the opinion of the industry that we love so very much if we're able to follow all of these rules and regulations that are getting determined right now, actually, as we speak. So for the next 55 minutes or so, I think until 4 o'clock, we're going to cover all of these topics. If anybody has any questions, please either jump in or raise your hand, and I will call on you so you can ask our panelists to answer that burning question of yours as we're talking about that particular topic. So that is enough from me, and I'm going to get things started. So the first thing we're going to do is talk about responsible gambling rules that are right now in the UK. I'm going to have Andrea lay these out for you so you know what the stage we're setting here for you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Becky. What a topic, right? This is the main topic everywhere, right? The regulatory requirements, specifically for player protection and how strict they're getting. If I remember 10 years ago when I first started in the industry, the requirements were, try to be responsible. Right? But now, and I'm actually going to go into saying a little bit about the regulation in the UKGC, and I'm going to read just a small excerpt from the regulation. Please don't worry, I'm not going to bore you, it's really short, so just bear with me. Licensees must use a range of indicators relevant to their customer and the nature of the gambling facilities provided in order to identify harm or, keyword, potential harm associated with gambling. And these must include, and now we're talking, customer spend, patterns of spend, time spent gambling, gambling behavior indicators, customer-led contact, blah, blah, blah. So there's quite a few indicators, right, that now is required of us to do that. Back in the day, we were not required to do that. Back in the day, we had alerts of deposits when a customer deposited a lot of money, right? So the harm was already done. It was financial harm, not just, we weren't even talking about behavioral harm back then, right? So, yeah, and not just that, but there's another regulation that says, let's just make it a little bit more difficult, because that's not enough. Licensees must tailor the type of action they take based on the number and level of indicators of harm exhibited. And this must include, and not be limited to, tailor action at lower levels of indicators of harm, increasing action where earlier stages have not, so they're quite complicated basically, right? So yeah, looks amazing.
Yeah, it's really complicated, but the good news here is that we do have technology available to us to help us navigate this crazy world that Andrea just laid out. So I'm actually going to have you continue, Andrea, to explain to us how AI, our favorite buzzword, is going to help everybody in this room abide by what you just read out to us.
Yeah, of course. So remember all of those indicators I just said like 3 seconds ago? This can be done with the help of AI models, right? AI models can look at data like time spent gambling, deposits, like gambling behavior, but as well as customer-led contact. So using natural processing language, the AI model can look at different keywords, they can look at cues, at context, and understand, okay, this guy might be, a bit problematic. Let's try to interact with him. And also what it can do is actually have adaptive interactions, which the UKGC and more regulations, this is something that I have not added before, is that more and more regulations are actually following the UKGC regulation and becoming more and more stricter. But the AI models can help us with adaptive interactions, which means that based on the different criteria that was identified, they can create a different interaction.
Very good, thank you. And Paula, I'm looking at you because I know that this is your absolute specialty at Mindway, and I know that you service markets that go well beyond just the UK when it comes to responsible gambling. So can you please enlighten us on how AI is going to help with responsible gambling around the world?
I'll do my best. That's all anyone can do, right? So yeah, this is what our business is built in. So hopefully, I can enlighten a little bit. I just want to add in a few points around the regulation before I go in to talk about the AI. So I think the key thing here is not just that you have to meet the regulation, but you also have to evidence to the regulator how you are meeting that regulation. They don't just want you to do it, they want you to demonstrate it. And that is super, super important when we're looking at this. Everything needs to be incredibly transparent. And then just talking about kind of further afield from the UK, looking at the regulatory picture and what's happening internationally, echoing what Andrea just said, we see regulators looking for these same stipulations. Even Brazil, who have just sort of published what the requirements are going to be over there, it has been mandated that player tracking is going to be one of those requirements. So this isn't just something that exists in one jurisdiction, and it isn't something that's going to go away either. I also personally believe it isn't just something we should be doing because the regulator tells us to. I think it's the right thing to do to understand our players. I also think it's the right thing to do from a business perspective to understand our players and be able to join up across all of our business what's happening, and I know we're going to talk a bit more detail about that later. So how can AI help? Well, I don't think there's any way you can actually do this at the kind of scale we're talking about without using technology. If you had somebody that was literally sitting there having to look for patterns in data and pick out the potentially problematic players in a manual way, I just don't see, you're talking literally millions of players. I don't see any way that you could possibly do that. So apologies to anybody that was in the session earlier, because there's going to be a bit of repetition here. But what we do at Mindway is we basically take the operator spin level data. We can work either spin level or session level. So what we're talking about on spin level is 10-minute by 10-minute sessions of gambling, or if it's sports betting, betting slip by betting slip. And we expose that data to a group of expert human psychologists. So these are guys and girls who have been in the treatment space, working with people that have experienced very severe gambling-related harm. And they work with these people day in, day out. We expose that data to them and we get them to identify the patterns within the data, incorporating all of the markers that were discussed here, and also incorporating context in terms of what we're seeing in that behaviour. We then train the algorithm to replicate their expert human decision making on scale. So fundamentally, what you end up with is like having an army of psychologists scanning your player data 24/7 and assessing the risk level of every one of your players on an individualized basis. You then also, it's not just about having the algorithm that can detect it. Another part of what the UKGC have been very, very heavy on is this whole idea of identify the behaviour, act on the behaviour, and then evaluate the action. So, okay, we've covered the identification piece, then the next bit is act. We have a very strong decision engine that will take that behaviour into consideration so that you can then automate certain interactions and interventions, and you can identify which players need human interaction. And because the behaviour monitoring is sort of explainable and understandable, so you know exactly what is going on with each player, you can then speak to them in a way that they recognise themselves in that interaction. So if somebody's issue is around time consumption, for example, there's no point talking to them about deposits because that's not where their issue is. So you can really personalise the information that you're sending to them, the interaction that you're having with them, the safer gambling tools that you are suggesting that they use, and hopefully keep your players in a more sustainable place so that they're not playing at those higher levels of risk. Then gets the really, really tricky bit, evaluate. And this is one that a lot of our customers were kind of like, how do we evaluate and how on earth do we evidence how we've evaluated when UKGC or whoever the regulator is comes knocking? So what we actually did to sort of deal with this piece is we've basically trained another model that supplements the overall risk score, and we call this the intensity model. And what we're looking at here is short-term, control, in play control. So you have an interaction, you have an intervention, you know that that's taken place at a certain point in time. You want to see how the behaviour changes following that intervention, but you also need to see consistency for it to have an impact to actually de-escalate the risk score. So we use the intensity model for this, which looks at short-term behaviour, and if we start to see short-term control, we then, obviously that will be fed into the decision engine, and the decision may well be, we watch and wait on this person, it looks like that intervention's worked. If we don't see short-term control, we then say, okay, what is the next step into generating that control? So you've got lots and lots of different indicators on the go at every one time to see what's happening, and the key point being for every single individual. We're not grouping players here, we're looking at players like, this is Becky, this is her gambling behaviour, this is Andrea, this is her gambling behaviour, and what you get is something that is incredibly powerful.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm telling you, 20 years ago when I started this, there was no responsible gambling at all. No, I'm joking. Andrea, I know you were taking some notes. Do you have anything to add here?
Yes, actually, the points that I want to emphasize in some of the points that you made regarding evaluation and evidence, because this is something that I come across a lot as an auditor. It is so important to evidence that we're doing all these amazing things, because we're doing these things and then we say we do these things, but how are we actually doing it, and the rationale behind it and everything. So it needs to be, procedures need to be written, and records need to be kept of everything that is included in that process. And another point is evaluating it. So it's not just for the purpose of being compliant that we need to evaluate these systems, we also need to evaluate them to see, does it make sense? Do I need to change anything? Does it add value if it's not necessarily a compliance thing? Does it add value, or am I using my resources inefficiently?
Very good. And Justina, I have not forgotten about you. We'll get to the AI Act in just one second. Before we go there, Paula, I just wanted you to elaborate a bit on responsible marketing. And I know that you're very passionate in my way about the push-pull of commercial and compliance and how that's going to be a thing of the past with all of this tech that you just described to our audience. So can you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, so I actually don't buy into the narrative of push-pull between compliance and commercial. We're working with one business, right? And that business needs to put the customer at the centre of the business and have one voice that communicates with that customer at all points in time. So we work with a lot of the big operators, and I know certainly one of those operators, the conversation started with them in what they basically said to me is that as soon as somebody hits a certain tier of risk, then they have to turn off all marketing. There is no sort of shades of grey in this, it's either on or off, and that they believed that if they could get a better understanding of risk and a better understanding of individual player risk, then you can look at that marketing message through the lens of risk as well, and you can sort of get yourself to a position where you might be like, okay, we're going to send content marketing to this player, but we're not going to send sort of these particular bonuses, or we're going to market sportsbook to them, but we're not going to market slots to them, for example. So it's about bringing the different divisions together and actually having a commercial driver behind this. And I think we've often talked about player sustainability and the whole idea of the lifetime of a player, the lifetime value of a player being something that is much better than somebody that's going to come in, they're going to burn out, they're a risk to your business. But it's very hard, and I get this because I'm a commercial person myself, when you've got quarterly, annual targets that you've got to hit, and you've got to hit your numbers, and your shareholders are interested in what those numbers are. So it's about, I couldn't turn around and go, well, guys, in 20 years' time, this person's still going to be a customer and it's going to be better then. I need to deliver those targets as well. I get that that's the same for the businesses that we're working with. So I feel it's about sort of, yes, the sustainability conversation is really important, but it's more than that. It's more about how can we make compliance something that is also commercial.
Very good. Very good. Oh, yes, please, Andrea, go ahead.
Oh, just finding the right balance.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Right, so we all know that AI can do some amazing things for our initiatives here, but there are rules now surrounding how we use AI. So Justina, I wanted you to explain to our audience here what the AI Act is and how the EU, how we're going to have to comply to these new rules. What are they?
We have a lot of new regulations at the European Union level, including AI Act. It's from June this year, and it's important to prepare for all entities connected with gambling industry for the future. Because we are using AI, we need to follow these regulations, and we need to know how we should apply it into our companies. So the Act covers providers, distributors, users, importers, and they all need to follow this regulation. I think the main point of this regulation is a classification of AI systems we have, which is based on a risk level. So we have high-risk AI systems, and those systems are connected with biometric data. They recognize emotions. They are connected with elections, jurisdictions, detecting crimes. So basically that kind of AI systems. And those companies which want to produce or use this kind of system, they need to have a European Union compliance declaration, which means that they are totally compliant with regulations. And it's temporary. So of course, after 5 years, you can renew it, but yeah, it's not for sure that you will have it all the time. And what more, if you are operating with AI system which is high risk, you need to register the system in a special base. It will be like common special base at the European Union level when you can check whether this system you're using is a high-risk system. Yeah, the other classification is general purpose system. And inside this classification, there are systems which can cause a risk. So when you operate this kind of system, you don't need to have European Union compliance certificate, but you need to stay compliant with regulations also. You should, of course, prepare technological documentation and develop cybersecurity, but those are not, just the same requirements as when we use high-risk AI systems. And general-purpose systems, they are very flexible. They can use various data, a lot of the data, and you can use it in a lot of applications. And general-purpose system is like, for example, ChatGPT. Yeah, this is those kind of system. So it's about classification, and of course we have some kind of AI systems which are prohibited. And those systems are connected with, for example, using AI beyond someone's awareness, or using, disabilities of people or age. Those are systems who use behavioral data to make some decisions in the future, for example, connected with elections. So I think those are the main point of AI Act, and we need to know that, we need to stay prepared. And what I want to tell more, we have various kinds of regulations at the European Union level. We have regulations which are applicable directly to every country connected with European Union regulations, and we have directives. Directive means that you need to transport it to your national regulations, but you can do it in some kind of different way. And regulation is like you need to stay totally compliant with these provisions, and AI Act is like regulation. So we need to apply it directly. And I know that entrepreneurs, they have a time till 2027, and those who are using a high-risk system before, they have time till 2030. So yeah, we have still a couple of years, but you need to stay prepared. And of course, fines. There are fines for not being compliant, and really big amounts. It's like 35 million euros for not staying compliant with this regulation. So yeah, we need to be prepared for that.
There's a lot to say on top of that. Right, okay, so bringing it back to today, I wanted to know from you ladies where the data is coming from that you're using in the online gambling systems that you're talking about. Where do you gather this data? I don't know if you've got this AI Act in mind when you're doing that and where you store it, but I'm going to start with you, Andrea. You can explain from your end what's going on.
Of course. So I see the sources of data categorized in three large categories, right? Internal data, this is data taken from what the operator has access to. So financial data, gameplay behavior, whatever the operator has access to. Then you have the external data that is taken from public records, sanctions list, etc. And then you have communication data, right? Unstructured data that is taken from communication with customer service, and so forth. And I think that since we're talking about all of this large data set, we need to look at it also from a risk assessment perspective. So I think that it's very important for operators to do a risk assessment and understand where weaknesses lie when it comes to AI models and the usage of this data and integrity of it as well.
Paula, please.
Yeah, so we're predominantly working with the operator gaming data, but we also do pull in other sets, just as Andrea was just saying. So anything around customer-led contact is obviously not going to be there in the player data, so you need to get that from a number of different sources. You also then need to think about other external data sets that may be relevant to feed in. So you can even feed things like click data, so if somebody's gone onto your safer gambling page, they've hovered over something, all of that kind of information can actually be fed in. I would say from our perspective, and I know I said this earlier as well, but the more data the better understanding you can get of what's going on. We try to sort of separate the data into behavioural data and other data and run some of it through the game scanner and some of it through the decision engine so that it crunches the right bits and we're not getting certain bits polluted that if you want a full behavioural picture, you're not necessarily going to get that from some of the other data sources. In terms of where is it stored, it varies when you work with us. So we have two ways that we can do this. We either deploy on-prem in the operator's own IT environment, and I'm not talking like in a data warehouse somewhere, in whatever cloud environment they're using, or we can do a hosted solution. We use AWS, right? And in terms of a standard, if there is one, then it being on AWS is as secure as I think you can get. If obviously it's in the operator's own environment, then the responsibility around those data standards remains with them. It varies on what people want to do. I've got some very, very big operators that have their data in the cloud with us. Some other operators, because of data protection considerations, they just prefer to keep it their side.
Very good. And some food for thought for the audience here. For sure, you can involve blockchain technology when it comes to the data that's being used for these AI algorithms. It's important to use a scalable blockchain for this, though, because obviously we're talking about huge amounts of data. But as you need to start proving and showing the data that you have to regulators and within the EU, like Justina was talking about, you can use blockchain to prove the provenance of your data, where it's coming from, and how you're using it. So think about how you can do that.
The other thing I should say actually is that all of the data that we work with is pseudo-anonymized. So there's no, well, there is some identifiable information. So we have things like date of birth, but it's going to be very hard to just identify somebody from only their date of birth. All of the identifiable data stays with the operator, and that's really important as well from a data protection perspective.
Very good. Yes, please.
I don't have a lot of experience with blockchain, but I think that should also help with being compliant with different regulations and different jurisdictions when it comes to GDPR, right, in terms of consent, because the player can give their consent to have their data used for the AI models, so when and how it's being used, that data within the blockchain.
That's absolutely right. If you really want to geek out, you can start using micropayments powered by blockchain to sell your data for small amounts of money, and this is a whole other topic, but very exciting. And before we move on to some anti-money laundering rules, regulations, and solutions, Andrea, could you just elaborate on some of the risks involved with using AI in the gambling industry?
Of course. So I touched about risk assessments that should be done for a healthy governance framework for all of the businesses. But let's discuss a little bit, just a couple of risks that can come with AI models. So one of the biggest concerns is that AI models may inadvertently reinforce bias present in the data that they are trained on. So if the historical data is skewed towards recognizing a certain demographics as higher risk for AML or responsible gambling, it might target and focus that specific group as showing that they do have those problems, which not only can bring regulatory issues, but can also bring ethical concerns as well. Over-reliance on AI as well. Now we have the data, that's amazing, we all want to use it, and AI models have all these juicy things that can happen, right? Automate the processes and everything. So we want to use it in our processes. But we need to make sure that we're not over-relying on it. AI models need to also have the human aspect of it. So we need to ensure that they are supervised and they are forever, they're auditable and they're calibrated with, just like we've discussed about historical data, is that they always have the correct data in order to take the decisions that they need to take. We've discussed data privacy risks as well, right? So we talk about large data sets. We need to keep in touch, keep in mind regulations like GDPR when discussing this. So whenever AI systems are designed, they need to be designed with data privacy in mind, ensuring data minimization and purpose limitation as well. And obviously another one, the most amazing one, is security risks, right? How many cyber attacks have we had lately? And we're all working, whoever works in the digital industry, we know that the cyber attacks are one of the highest top 3 risks that businesses can incur. And if we are starting to use AI models more often and integrate them, then they can become a target to these cyber attacks. And they can be used to manipulate their processing for fraudsters to be able to bypass them.
Yes, please, Paul.
It's terrifying, right?
The world we live in.
I just wanted to pick up on the points that you were making there around kind of having a human in the loop. Yeah. And I've sat on many other panels and discussed this at length. I think, HITFA panels as well, we've talked about this. And I think it is really, really important that we recognise that we are not trying to replace humans here. What we're doing is we are making human decision-making more intelligent, and it could not be more important to make sure you still have a human in the loop. And I think even from a legal perspective, correct me if I'm wrong, but if somebody questions a decision that has been made based on AI, you have to be able to go back and back that up, and it therefore does need to be explainable and understandable. You can't have a black box situation where the AI says this person has a problem, but you don't know why.
And actually, it is questioned by the regulator.
Yeah.
When you are audited, they do question, okay, how did you come up to that decision?
Yeah.
Yeah?
No.
No?
I just wanted to say that, right?
Never mind. Okay, excellent. And before we make a transition to anti-money laundering, does anybody in the audience have any questions regarding AI, responsible gambling, anything? Yes.
Yes, I have. I'm loud enough, I guess.
You're loud. We can hear you.
Thank you, Bill. Justina, I have a question to you about EU regulation of AI. What you mentioned, does it mean we as marketers should mark our ads, our text, and whatever that AI was used for that? And if so, how the regulator will figure out whether it's AI or not? Because even when you use AI, there are a lot of humanizators, I would say, on the market, and it's impossible to figure out what is AI and what is not for 100%. So, what is the solution here?
You should definitely inform users wherever you are using AI, because it's really hard to recognize when we are dealing with AI systems. How the regulator will check it, I don't really know. It's a technological thing, I suppose, and for that time I can explain it, and I don't know the way they will use to check it and verify it.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, all right, so let us make a bit of a transition to anti-money laundering and ALMA, rules and regulations. Justina, I'm going to look to you for this one.
Yeah, me again about regulations. You are probably so happy about so many regulations in one time. But we have new AML package, and it's really connected with gambling industry also. So we need to know what new regulations we will need to apply in our companies too. Those are 3 acts. One is anti-money laundering regulation. Another is sixth directive. And the last one is about new body on the European Union level called Anti-Money Laundering Authority. So what's new about anti-money laundering regulation? The main goal of this act is to harmonize all rules or provisions connected with AML. We all know that this is the biggest problem of gambling industry, that in every country we have different regulations. And usually entities connected with gambling industry, they want to operate multi-jurisdiction, you know, they want to make their business in a lot of countries, not the only one. So the European Union is going in this kind of the direction that we will have common rules for anti-money laundering first, and then we'll see maybe something more. But for now, the main goal of this regulation is to harmonize all these rules. So we doesn't have any new comparing this to previous regulations, but it's like, you know, main rules which are common for every country. What can I say more about this regulation is that the regulation is telling that for gambling industry, for example, every country can set up, you know, different rules for entities which are causing a lower risk. For example, this kind of entity is business connected with promotional lotteries, then the compliance procedure can be easier than usually, but for online part of industry, it's definitely necessary to stay compliant to the fully. So I think those are the main point of AML regulation. And about sixth directive, this is directive, so we don't need to apply it directly. I think every country on the European Union level will transform it to the country regulations. And we have in this act common rules for United Intelligence, financial intelligence units. So we have financial intelligence units. And for example, in Poland is General Inspectorate of Financial Information. And we have common rules for these units too, in Directive number 6. So we will have common base where everyone can report some breaches connected with AML. So this is something new, and we need to balance between, you know, these big common bases and between protecting information about data. So for sure it will be challenging to balance these two aspects. And about anti-money laundering authority, it will be like common supervisory body, and it will try to coordinate actions on the every country level, and of course it will have competence to execute regulations. So again, we will have penalties for not staying compliant. I think it's very good perspective that the European Union take care about common regulations. It will be just easier for entities from industry to apply it, and it will be easier doing business multi-jurisdictions. So those are the main points.
More regulation, yay!
More regulation.
But again, we have future technology to help us here. So let's talk a bit about how AI can help us with our anti-money laundering initiatives. I know it overlaps a bit with responsible gambling, but we'll dive into this topic as well. I'm going to ask Andrea to talk about how AI can assist.
Yeah, of course. So AI can assist in AML issues in a similar way, just like you said, like it does for responsible gambling. It looks at different characteristics that are considered suspicious, different indicators. But one thing that I found very interesting is that, for example, they can look at the website and it can look at how the customer moves their pointer around, and they can identify, oh, okay, is this a human or is this a bot that's doing that? Or it can identify subtle nuances that, because we're talking about such a large data set, manual intervention and human oversight does not have the ability to look at. So it takes this large data set and looks at these nuances and can connect them, and we can identify, for example, multiple accounting or fraudulent rings that apparently, or to the human eye, seem very different from each other.
Very good, Paula. I'm sure you have something to add there.
Well, just a little to add to that, really, not a lot.
Okay.
But what I would say is that it's about setting up the triggers in the system. So we treat AML in the same way we would responsible gaming. You're looking for different patterns, as Andrea just very eloquently explained there, but you're still looking for patterns. And it's about making sure that you've configured the action part of the solution to highlight these and to send them to the right operatives within the operator again. So again, sorry guys, something I talked about this morning, but the workflow, the operational workflow, understanding who's responsible for what and making sure your system is configured to, bear this in mind and fit with that is really, really important here as well.
Very good. And sorry, go ahead, Justina, please.
I just want to add that AI for sure helps to identify beneficial owners, and it's very important because criminals often hide their identity and they are using shell companies and intermediaries. So yeah, definitely we have tools which can help us identify who is the real beneficial owner. And it helps with AML, because these crimes are connected with AML.
You think about the amount of investigation work that historically would have gone into that exact process, and then it can just be done and verified rather than investigated is amazing, right?
Yeah. Amazing. Yep. Please go ahead.
But it's all about the data, isn't it? Back in the day, we didn't have the data. Now we have the data, but what are we going to do with all this data? We really cannot look at all of it. And now we have the ability to use the data in its best way.
Love it. Amazing. And I honestly can't help but think a little bit about crypto and digital currency when it comes to anti-money laundering. I don't want to paint it to a negative picture there, but we've also been talking quite a bit about Mika, I'm not sure what's the correct way to pronounce it, but I know Justina knew a bit about Mika, and can you please explain how that ties into some of the anti-money laundering regulations that you have been talking about?
Yeah, Mika is market in crypto assets, and as we know, crypto assets are very attractive to gambling industry. So, for example, in Poland, we had only few provisions connected with crypto assets. So it was free to use it, but regulators were very careful about letting other entities to use it. So it was kind of a problem. I know that entities which are operating crypto assets, they are maybe not happy about Mika because they need to fulfill new requirements, but still, I can see another better side of this regulation. It can cause, new possibilities to work with legal part of the industry. Yeah? So maybe regulatory approach will change because of Mika, because crypto assets are regulated at the European Union level, yes? So those requirements shows that this is totally legal to use crypto assets, yeah, that you fulfill all these requirements, and it will be more transparent because entities connected with crypto assets, they will they need to make KYC procedures, yeah? So it will be clear, we will have clear information about users' identity. And I think it will even help for entities connected with this market to enter legal part of industry. And yeah, the regulator wants to make a common framework for crypto assets and AML. So yeah, I think this is the first step to just make common rules and entering crypto assets in these rules, and you need to fulfill it if you want to stay compliant.
Very good. Does anybody have any questions about anti-money laundering, MiCA, any of these rules, regulations? No. Okay. We have about 10 minutes left and a few more topics to cover. But what I wanted to talk about now are how do we prepare for all of these rules? Some of them are not even out there yet. We just know about them in the future at some point in time. But I know, Andrea, you have some insights on internal audits and things that can help us prepare.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that regulators have started to tell us themselves how to stay abreast of this by using technological advancement, by being aware of what's happening out there and how we can leverage technology in order to stay on top of their regulations, right? But aside from that, I think that we really need to have a proper compliance framework in place. I'm coming from compliance, so there you go. A little bit biased there. But we should ensure, operators should ensure that when working with this technology, with the AI models, that they are robust, that they are regularly validated, so audited, that they are compliant with regulatory expectations, and that they are flexible, right? Because the regulatory ecosystem changes all the time. So the models need to be flexible in order to adapt to that. They need to be effectively implemented as well, because we are talking about possibly old systems as well that we're trying to implement this AI models into it. So that's something that we need to take care of. And it needs to be adaptable. And I believe that even the AI Act will push for clear documentation, right, and accountability for it. So we have to evidence how these AI models get to their results, to their conclusion. In addition to that, operators need to ensure that they have robust frameworks in place. So like I said, compliance, data integrity, as well as cybersecurity to make sure that we mitigate the risks that we've just discussed before. And yes, and internal audit teams, right, how can they help? How do we add to the compliance framework that we've just discussed before? So basically you have your compliance teams, they're doing their job, yeah, great, right, making sure that everybody is compliant from a regulatory perspective, and that we have the licenses, and that we have the certification, and that we are a healthy business. And then you have your commercial departments who are making sure that we're profitable and that we can continue to meet those licenses and certification. What internal audit does is it doesn't look at the processes, procedures, policies from a regulatory perspective. It also looks at it from a commercial perspective, right? Because our objective is to add value. So we would add value from a compliant perspective as well as commercial. We look at processes, make sure they're compliant, but also do they make sense? Are we using our resources inefficiently? So what do is we assess regulatory compliance, like I've just said. We test and validate the third-party tools, so AI models, for example, to make sure that they are being used effectively, efficiently, and most importantly, that the company has the documentation to validate, to prove that these the tools, the third-party tools that we're using, they're being used effectively and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. We conduct risk assessments and gap analysis as well, and we enhance preparedness for external audits from the regulator as well as other certifications and so forth, which I think is a very important topic to discuss about, because with the regulations changing all the time, new regulations coming into place, stricter regulations coming into place, there's also audits coming into place, external audits from regulators, fines coming. So an audit team, what we do for our company is that we sit down with our stakeholders and we prepare them for audits. We look at procedures and policies, how they're being written, and we add value by providing them with the insight coming from an auditor. So I think that's quite important what we do.
Very important. Sounds complicated, but made easier by you. Anything to add there, Paula?
Just picking up on the point around regulators actually being interested in these technologies now. So I've been at Mindway for just over 2 years, and the first panels that I did when I first started at Mindway, I was like beating the drum for regulators to engage. I had a bit of a soapbox topic that, the regulators needed to understand the tech that was available to them to be able to regulate in a way that actually made sense for the era we're now in. I am no longer on that soapbox, and that is a really, really positive thing. We do now have regulators internationally engaging with us. It used to be they would keep all suppliers at arm's length, not so much anymore. They want to understand what we're doing, and they want to understand that from two perspectives. So they want to understand because it feeds into the legislation, and they want to know what's available to operators, but they also want to understand because we have a number of regulators that are thinking about this as a kind of market-wide solution as well. So that's one way that this could go potentially. I don't know, there's nothing firm there, but it certainly is what I see when I look at the conversations that we have. But I think that's positive because we want our regulator to understand what we're doing. There is nothing worse than when you're working in markets that it feels like somebody has come in and set a load of arbitrary rules and put a load of arbitrary thresholds in that don't make any sense in the actual world of gaming. So if they are engaging, they do want to understand. That's a good thing. We hopefully then end up with regulation that actually reflects what we do in the industry. So that's great. The other point I just really want to make, I guess it's probably my new soapbox, sorry about this guys. I got rid of one, I got a new one in. But we see a lot of operators sort of getting to the point where they think we're going to develop this stuff in-house. We're not going to work with the experts that have been working on this for years and years and years. We're going to do it in-house. And I cannot tell you the amount of conversations that I've had with an operator, and then they've gone away, and 6-12 months later, they've come back and they've said to me, this is way more complicated than we thought it was. Actually, can we restart this conversation? So I really want to urge everybody, use the expertise that is there. Like, speak to the people who do this day in, day out. It's super important to get it right. It sometimes looks like it's really going to be dead easy. We're just looking at markers. We just need to flag them. It really is not that straightforward.
Very good. And we have just about, I think, 3 minutes left. Any questions from the audience? No. Okay. So let's take a little glimpse into the future here. I know that's really hard. Some of these regulations not even been laid out yet. But what kind of a future are we looking at here? Are we going to have technology automating everything so we don't even have to worry about it? Is it going to be streamlined? What do you guys think? I'm just going to move down the line. Maybe one less than a minute answer. Andrew, I'll start there.
So I feel like AI models and automation will reshape or will play and is playing a major role in the future and shaping the future of regulatory compliance. And I think it's the other way around as well. Whenever we encounter challenges coming from regulations, technology always seems to find a way to help us out. So I think that it's hand in hand. Whether it will be full automation, I feel it's unlikely to be so. I think that even the best of AI models, they need that human oversight to make sure that it catches on exceptions, on nuances, and so forth, to make sure that the AI model is still doing what it's supposed to be doing, and that the data that it's using in order to come up with the conclusions that it's coming up with, it's still valid and used the right way.
Very good. Paula?
So I love the idea of the machines taking over and running everything. Like, that would be amazing, right? I have this personal dream of just running a beach bar that is like the world's best beach bar. But unfortunately, I think I'm still going to be worrying about the things that I worry about today. I think in my mind, this is about information. it's about decision making, it's about making us smarter to apply that human decision making. It's a tool. Just like as we look through technological developments through history, there have been many, many tools that have enabled us to do that. I think it's the next step. I don't think it's going to make us all redundant. And I think that beach bar is still a long way in my future, unfortunately.
Justina.
Yeah, I think technology will cover a big area of our life. And for sure, we are living in a data transparency era, so it will be really difficult to hide anything. I think we need to stay compliant because with all these regulations, because let's be honest, our industry doesn't have the best opinion, the best reputation yet. So let's change it. Let's use this technology to stay more compliant. Yeah. And let's show the world that, hey, this is fun and this is safe. This is safe. And I really believe that technology will help us with this issue.
Very good. My final thoughts for you guys, something to think about, is that as we move forward in this world of AI, which is here to stay for a long time, forever, blockchain and AI go together. And I think that as we have all these regulations coming out surrounding AI, blockchain technology is really going to help you remain under the umbrella of the regulations. So just have to think about that. Thank you guys so much. That's the end of our panel.